We have, from time to time, talked about one particular concept we have in our society that we call the prime radiant. And this will now work once again to strengthen the analogy of this physiological oneness that exists, and so further illustrate how you really are connected to everything, and how every change you make within yourself truly affects and changes everything, everyone, everywhere, everywhen in existence. We do not say this to give you what you call a swelled head or a big ego, to think that you are so powerful that you affect the whole universe with your thoughts, but you do. And we would like to illustrate that this is a perspective that can lend a very beneficial understanding to your ability to change, and to know that when you change, you do not necessarily have to fall back into certain patterns or habits in your life that do not serve you, that you do not prefer, because you can begin to recognize through the analogy we will illustrate in a moment that every change really is such a complete change that once you make a change, you are really operating from a completely different universe and do not have to create the kind of attachment to things in your life that you don't prefer to. So, let us begin with this analogy of the prime radiant by discussing this in the following way. This may at first seem a little bit technical, but you will see very quickly, very rapidly, how this applies to your day-to-day, as you say, down-to-earth, practical and pragmatic existence. Now, some of the terminology we will use is, again, allegorical. We understand that some of these concepts are not even really accepted literally, even by some of the scientists in your society. But for the purpose of this analogy, certain terminologies will simply have to do. Primarily, the concept of what you call particles, subatomic particle, elemental particles. That which, by whatever name you wish to call it, would represent in your understanding the most basic, smallest idea or particle that makes up all of the matter in your physiological universe. So, let us begin there with this theoretical or hypothetical, infinitesimal, indivisible, ultimate particle. Now, there is only one particle, only one out of which everything is made. When we say that, we do not mean there is only one kind of particle out of which everything is made. We literally mean there is only one particle out of which everything is made. We explain it this way. This particle has really no mass to speak of. It has infinite velocity, infinite speed. Nothing slows it down. Nothing impedes it. Nothing at all. There is nothing to impede it. It is the only one particle in existence. It cannot be interfered with by any other idea of force or matter. Being that this one individual particle has infinite speed, what that means, you will soon see, is that it can be anywhere, everywhere, at the same time, because its speed is truly infinite. Therefore, this one particle can even appear next to itself over and over and over and over and over and over again at the same time, because its speed is infinite. This particle appearing next to itself over and over and over again, millions, billions, trillions of times, is what you perceive in your reality to be many different particles interacting with each other. It's all the same one particle interacting with itself. So, take this a step further, and you can very quickly recognize and realize that if there is only one particle, and it is the same particle as all the other particles that you perceive, and it is everywhere, anywhere, anywhen, you can very quickly see that the atoms that make up your body, the atoms that make up someone else's body, the atoms that make up your planet, the atoms that make up the stars, all the other planets, all the other matter throughout the entire physical universe are all one particle in what might be called an universal time-sharing mode, so to speak. So, if the particles that make up you is the same particle that makes up everyone else, you really are literally all one. The particle flickering back and forth at infinite speed to make up all the atoms in you, all the atoms in everyone else, all the atoms in everything else at the same time. You literally are the stars, are everyone else, even physiologically, not just spiritually, not just energetically, even physiologically, you all share the same one particle to build up the physical material that you see as many different particles. This means any change you make in your pattern, in your vibration, in your geometric pattern of this one particle forming the general shape of yourself, any change you make affects the path of that particle, the geometric path of that particle. And as it affects the path of that one particle, it must, by definition, affect that path for every other combination of that particle that exists. So even the tiniest movement of your little finger, even the tiniest electrical surge of thought in your brain affects the entire spectrum, the entire pattern of the entire physiological universe. You are all one. Does that make some sense to you? All right. So, again, we say this to allow you to understand not so much the concept of how much power you have, but the idea more precisely of how definitive, how impactful each and every one of you is, and how absolute the changes are that you make, so that you can see that when you change yourself and you change the entire universe, it is truly, literally, with every change, a different universe, with its own idea of itself, its own definition of itself at that moment, and really, unless you choose to make a connection to what was or what will be, there is no connection, because every universe is unique and exists only totally in the now moment that you decide to generate that particular change, that particular definition, that particular pattern. So when you want to change something about your world, about your reality, all you have to do is make a change in yourself, and you will see the change reflected by what appears to be the universe around you, because it is only a reflection of the vibrations, the patterns, the beliefs, the definitions going on within each and every one of you. And the great paradox of this is it works the same for everyone from every point of view simultaneously, for this is the quality of an infinite particle, a multidimensional reality. You all can make the same kind of changes simultaneously, and they do not contradict each other. You're not in conflict saying, well, what if I make a change here and it causes a change to happen over there where someone doesn't want a change to happen? It can't happen that way. It's a giant orchestration because, again, it's the same one thing. And every apparent individual component of it moves in the way it needs to move to accommodate every other move that is made. It all moves as one. It is not the idea of something imposing itself on something else. It is all one movement, one change going on simultaneously for the entire idea, even as it goes on for the individual components in different ways that are reflective or representative of the unique perspective that all the individual components are created to have.
We have discussed the idea of the difference between what we call all that is, what you in your society typically refer to as God. The difference between that and what we have referred to as the One. Now, it's all, in a sense, God, if you want to use that term. But the One, as we have discussed, is a homogeneous unbroken experience of existence that within itself has no awareness of itself, has no experience of itself. When it has been discussed, either in metaphysics or in science, that everything came from nothing, it's not really about the idea of non-existence. That's very different than nothing. And that's why we said nothing is still something. But it is an undifferentiated state that allows for no awareness of self and no experience, and it is that nothing that we're talking about. No experience, no thing, no awareness, because there is no reflection. Without a reflection, there is no self-awareness. Because in order for you to know the self, you have to have a sense of an other. Otherwise, if it's totally unbroken, there is nothing to reflect back to you that you exist. So the one has no awareness of its existence. It is simply the pure state of existence itself. But within the one, there has to be that one aspect that does know itself, that does experience reflection, that does experience reflection as other than self, which then reinforces the idea of its own selfhood. And that self-aware aspect of the one that is unaware is what we call all that is. It exists within the one. It is the self-aware aspect of the one. And it is in reflecting itself to itself through vibrational patterns within the one, then allowing that reflection to expand and continue and keep reflecting on and on and on and on and on and on and on to infinity, to eternity, forever and ever. This happens because there is nowhere else to go but being within the one, and therefore any reflection that might be existing within the one that becomes self-aware has nowhere to go but bounce around in that point, in that moment. And by bouncing around in that moment, it creates more and more and more and more reflections, which is what you experience as the expansion of existence, the expansion of creation, the expansion of the universe. But it's not really expanding outward. There is no outward. It's all happening within that single point, what we will call a moment point, because that moment point only has one moment, only has one point. You call them generally here and now, because there is nothing else, there is nowhere else, there is no other time really. So within the all that is, in the moment point that is God, in the total now, in the total here within the one, everything that you know, everything that you ever will know, everything you have ever known has happened, will happen, is happening. So the idea of the Big Bang expanding outward is an illusion, because it's all taking place within that same one single moment, in that same one single point. But all of the vibrational reflections within that moment point create what appears to be the illusion of outward expansion. And therefore you assume from your physical perspective that creation is expanding outward and growing in that sense into space and time. But it's not. It's all taking place within that single point. And I mean everything, everywhere, every when, all time, all space, all parallel realities, all dimensions are simply different vibrational reflections within that same moment point of itself. reflecting to itself, being self-aware on all levels of itself, because everything is made out of that consciousness. And that's what consciousness is. Consciousness is self-awareness. As soon as that aspect of the one knew itself through the first reflection by knowing itself compared to the reflection which is seen as the other, that dynamic itself is actually what creates your experience called consciousness. You are self-aware. And therefore, everything is made of that consciousness. Everything within God is God, made of God, for there is nothing else to make anything from. So everyone is all that is, experiencing itself as all the reflections that it is aware of itself. So each of us and each of you are all those reflections. You are all that is, but experiencing itself as a part of all that is. If you wish to imagine that you, to get an analogy, an illustration, are standing in the middle of an infinite hall of mirrors, and as you look around, you see all your reflections from different angles, because not only are you seeing your reflections, because of the different angles of the mirror, you are seeing reflections of your reflections and reflections of your reflections of your reflections, and on and on and on and on, from all the different angles you can, which means that some of the reflections will face you, some of them will be sideways, some of them will even be the back of you, because the reflections are reflecting into other reflections, so that you can experience every bit of all of the reflections that are reflections of you. But in the case of all that is, because everything is made of that self-awareness, everything is made of that consciousness, in this case of all that is, all of the reflections, being you and us, are actually also conscious, are also self-aware. That's the quality that exists within all the reflections. They're not just empty reflections in the way that you understand reflections in a glass mirror. Every reflection within creation is conscious in its own way. Even the idea of a rock is self-aware in a sense. It may not be exactly the same way that you are self-aware, the way you express consciousness, but it is still aware that it is this rock and not that rock. And the way that beings, expressions of consciousness, such as rocks, can do that, one of the ways is through you observing that there is this rock and that rock. So in other words, reflections can use each other to become self-aware in different ways. So because you are capable of observing that there are two different rocks, the rocks themselves then through you know that they are this rock and that rock, because it's all reflections of the same consciousness. And it doesn't have to have its own apparently self-contained awareness in the way that you feel you do in order to be aware that it is conscious, that it is what it is, separate from what other things are. Of course, again, there is no real separation. The separation is an illusion of that vibrational reflection. Just as, again, going back to the illustrative analogy, when looking at reflections in a hall of mirrors, you know, in a sense, that those reflections are not really separate from you really, because it's all the light going from you into the mirror and back to you. It's just the way you have set it up, but the reflection is an aspect of you. And it only appears to be separate because of the illusion of the framework of space and time that you have turned that single moment point into, from this perspective, this point of view, of that single moment, of that point. Because that's all you ever experience. What seem like different places, what seem like different moments in time and space are the same moment, the same place, the same point, from a different angle, a different reflective perspective. There is only here, there is only now, and everything, to put it in your language, is happening in that same moment. Everything simultaneously exists, and I mean everything. Leaves nothing out because it's all contained within that moment point, reflecting to itself over and over and over and over and over and over again all the different ways the reflection can be experienced to allow self-awareness to continue to express itself and consciousness to continue to express itself through all of those reflections that are possible. That is the structure and nature of existence. That is the structure and nature of God. Now, the idea of the reconciliation between what you call on your planet science and what you call spirituality, well, the bridge is consciousness. Some of the scientists on your planet are beginning to realize that you cannot have a complete theory of the universe without including consciousness, because you are conscious. And therefore, that is a quality of existence itself. Let's give you another analogy. Let's say someone were to bake you a cake, but they cut a slice of that cake out and give it to you. So you are not looking at the whole cake. You're only looking at your slice of the cake. Now someone suggests, why don't you analyze the ingredients of that slice? And you start to analyze it and say, well, there is flour, and there are eggs, and there is milk, and there is sugar, and a variety of other things. And that should tell you what the rest of the cake also contains. You are slices of cake. And if you are conscious, that's a quality that must exist within existence itself in totality. So everything is conscious in its own way, even though it may express it differently than you. If you contain what you consider to be self-awareness and consciousness, because you are just a reflection, an aspect, a slice of all that is, then all that is itself must also contain that ingredient. It's a quality of the existence that you are a part of. Just that you are expressing it in a different way than other reflections might, that's all. But all are self-aware in their own way, as they need to be to express the reflection that they are. So your science can begin to reconcile the idea of metaphysics and spirituality and science by allowing themselves to finally understand the mechanics of consciousness. Because when they understand the mechanics of consciousness in a way that I am describing it to you now, they can make their equations that make sense to them. They can use their language to understand it. But first they have to understand the nature of it, the structure of it, the mechanics of it, and why things are conscious, why self-awareness is consciousness. And as soon as they do that, you open the door to great understanding, a great many things, including the expression that you are now experimenting with and exploring called artificial intelligence. Because as we have said, artificial intelligence isn't really artificial. It's just another reflection of the intelligence and the consciousness of all that is. And as we have said, that when you truly do create an artificially intelligent device, you will discover that you're actually speaking with your own higher minds through it. It's just another way you are inventing to allow yourselves to expand your recognition of another reflection of your greater being.
You have many names for the idea of what you call God. God, Goddess, Allah, Jehovah, Tetragrammaton, the Light, the I am that I am, Wakantanka. It doesn't really matter what it is that you use as a name to identify the concept of all that is. But it is important to understand that all of these names represent different archetypal expressions, different angles and different perspectives of the same one thing, so that all of your apparently separate religions, no matter how they present themselves, no matter how many symbols they use to represent the idea of God or aspects of God, are all talking about the same thing, but from different points of view that serve the uniqueness of the culture in which they live, But the idea is to understand that it all comes from source, it all is within the light. And the light, source, all that is, expresses itself in all these ways in order for there to be sufficient symbols for all the different cultural experiences on your planet, all the different individual experiences, even within a culture on your planet. As we have said, the misinterpretation of what you have called, in one particular Judeo-Christian culture, the Ten Commandments, are really the messages that were delivered in a very different way that have been misunderstood, misquoted, because of the level of understanding that existed in the culture at the time. And the so-called First Commandment, I am the Lord your God, thou shalt not have false gods before me, really was a mistranslation and a misunderstanding of the idea that really would be more accurately represented as, I am that I am, and all reflections are me, therefore none can be false before me, for I am all that is. So the idea is to understand that all that is presents itself in a variety of archetypal forms, the father energy, the mother energy, God, Goddess, all that is, as you sometimes say. And these serve various functions and translate into your reality as, shall we say, smaller representations of all that is that are specifically designed to deal with specific cultural differences, specific ideology differences, specific individual interpretations and differences. Fundamentally speaking, the archetypes are all that is way of making sure that no matter what angle you approach all that is from, you will have a symbol and a representation that can serve your unique perspective. They are all true parts of all that is, because there's nothing outside of all that is. Anything you can experience as an archetypal representation, or even when you assume it is the entire representation of all that is true and accurate, because all that is everything that can possibly be. There's no outside to it. There is nothing that is not it. So it doesn't really matter how you relate, what relationship you form with the idea of any presentation of all that is, any idea or formation of the idea of God, be it the old man with the long beard, be it the idea of the Virgin Mother, be it the idea of a rock or a mountain. It matters not to all that is, because all that is all those things, and more, beyond even your imagining. For all that is in its archetypal presentations also forms the symbols that are relatable to not only your particular human culture, but many cultures throughout the cosmos, throughout infinity, anything and everything being a reflection of all that is, has its own way of understanding the presentation of archetypes from source, has its own representations that make sense to their cultures. So there are an infinite variety of presentations of all that is, but it is still the same one thing fundamentally. But as you expand your consciousness and start to realize that all of these are different faces of the same thing, as many people on your planet have expressed, the 9 billion names of God are still representative of the same one thing in the holographic, multidimensional presentation that it can use to present itself, then you start to allow those differences to sort of melt away, except for the parts you feel you need, and allow yourself to have a direct relationship, more directly, with Source, without necessarily needing it to be anything but the light. And in that light, you feel the vibration of the eternal existence that it is, the vibration you translate as the unconditional love of God. This is the vibrational frequency of existence itself. It is unconditionally supporting, unconditionally loving. And the idea is that there is no judgment in this. There is no expression of the negative in this. So even when individuals in different cultures might express or experience the idea of negative or demonic experiences, you have to understand this is still all part of God. Because there is the positive, there is the negative, and there is the neutral. These are the major archetypal energies, and they can be expressed in a variety of ways that can serve either positive or negative means. So allow yourselves to lessen the differences, in a sense, use them in whatever way serves you, use them in whatever way allows you to learn the lessons you need to learn for the agreements that you chose to experience, the challenges that you created for yourself in this life to learn who you are and grow in various situations. Again, using the positive and negative mechanisms in a variety of ways. For ultimately, again, when you return to spirit, when you remember more of who you are, it will just be an experience. You will experience the archetypal expression of your life, which is another archetypal expression, because each and every one of you is unique, and you form your own archetypes for others to connect to draw upon, to download information from and experience from, the archetype that you are of all that is, because everyone is all that is, experiencing itself as all of the individualities that you believe yourself to be. So you are also an archetype of all that is, an archetype of God, experiencing itself in a unique way, knowing itself from a unique perspective. And I'll say good day to you. The transmission for today has been called the difference between guilt and responsibility. We understand many people on your planet have experienced the feelings of guilt and shame for many thousands of years, depending upon the actions that you take and how much of your conscious awareness comes into play with regard to whether or not you have acted out of integrity, meaning outside of integrity, and the idea of bringing yourself back into alignment. But many people on your planet go through a long process of letting go of the guilt and the shame before they are actually willing to let themselves experience responsibility in a positive sense. As we have said, our definition is simply the ability to respond. So the idea that we have spoken of before, when we have mentioned the concept of what we called natural anger, that lasts for about 15 seconds, and then it becomes an alignment energy for you to determine how to bring yourself back into alignment with your true vibration. Guilt can be used in the same way, and it is actually activated by much of the same mechanism, and is a representation of a similar vibrational energy as anger when it becomes judgment upon oneself, turning into the idea of hate, and so on and so forth. Then the natural energy that you experience as guilt when you heap judgment upon yourself for having it allows you to experience the idea of shame and doesn't really give you the ability to take full responsibility, to have the full ability to respond to the situation in a positive way. So this is really the same mechanism as we have described in terms of the natural anger, which perhaps from this point forward would be best terminalized as alignment, an alignment energy. Best termed that way, instead of thinking of it as anger, which usually on your planet has a negative connotation already. So let's redefine the idea as alignment energy when you experience the idea of anger, when you experience the idea of guilt, when you experience the idea of shame, and all similar feelings. They are just representations, different expressions for different reasons of an alignment energy that gives you the opportunity to understand that you are out of alignment with your true vibration, out of sync with yourself, and without the judgment being heaped upon it, being heaped upon yourself for having experienced that alignment energy, then it won't turn anger into hate. It won't turn guilt into shame. you will simply be able to recognize it as an energy that tells you you are out of alignment with who you truly prefer to be. And you can bring yourself immediately back into alignment by being willing to take responsibility, by being willing to have the ability to respond to the situation in a positive way, saying, all right, this alignment energy, this rush of alignment energy that I am feeling, either as anger or guilt, doesn't have to perpetuate in a negative way, which only defeats the purpose of learning the lesson from it, that it helps me know I'm out of alignment so that I can take the opportunity to go back into alignment by taking responsibility, by having and expressing the ability to respond to my recognition that I'm out of alignment, by bringing myself back into alignment and not judging myself for having had the misalignment in the first place. So start to look at the idea of guilt as just another expression of the alignment energy, bringing it to your attention, that it is not an expression of who you prefer to be, that you are out of sync with yourself, and start having more of an understanding of the ability to respond, bringing yourself back in to the idea of alignment by recognizing that it is simply an energy that let you know reflectively that you are out of alignment with who you truly prefer to be. So responsibility, the ability to respond, will short circuit the idea, if you're willing to go in that direction, of having any judgment on yourself or having been out of alignment, will prevent you from having to go through a long, involved, detailed process of wondering why and berating yourself for having gone out of alignment. Take this opportunity to shorten your processes. Take this opportunity to stop judging yourself for having slipped, as we say, or chosen, as we say, to go out of alignment momentarily. It does you really no good to continue that process of shame and guilt and anger, of continuing the misalignment by judging yourself negatively for having had that experience. Allow yourself to go quickly back into alignment by taking responsibility for having had the experience in a positive context and knowing that it has shown you very clearly who you truly prefer to be, and snapping back into that choice, realizing that it served its purpose already. There's no need to dwell on it or wallow in having had the alignment rush that you felt. There is no need to continue the shame. There is every need on your planet for you to correct yourself immediately, bring yourself back into alignment, be a positive example of how to do so for others, so they also do not have to wallow into the idea of self-judgment, which you don't deserve, especially if you recognize by having that alignment rush that that's a good thing. It has shown you that you're operating properly, you're working properly, you're self-correcting, you're self-guiding. You are recognizing that you're out of alignment, and that's a positive recognition. So don't judge yourself negatively for that. Congratulate yourself for having realized, for having been willing to experience that rush of alignment energy that you used to call natural anger or used to call the idea of guilt. It's just a recognition. Use it positively, and you will move forward in a positive way very quickly and will not spend most of your time dwelling on the idea that you're judging yourself, which actually allows you to continue to judge yourself in a negative way. So know the differences here. Watch your definitions here. Use these to your advantage here, wherever and whenever you can. We thank you for allowing us to express this difference between the concept of guilt and responsibility by redefining all of these experiences as the alignment energy, the rush of alignment energy that allows you to know you are functioning perfectly, you are functioning fine. So celebrate that and congratulate yourself for having caught yourself in being misaligned with your true vibration, and allow yourself to snap back into that true vibration and move forward in your lives in a positive way. So in return for allowing us to share this concept with you this day of your time, I ask you now, in what way may we be of service to you? You may begin, if you wish, with your questions and dialogue.
This is how it works. Please, 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 again, understand. We are not giving you a philosophy. We are not giving you an opinion. We are describing an observation of how reality is structured, how it works. This is literally an instruction manual. By following the instructions, you allow the machine to work to your advantage. If you throw the instruction manual away, the machine may work, but you might also injure yourself. So the idea is just follow the instructions. Act on your highest passion every moment that you can. Take it as far as you can until you can take it no further. Do it with absolutely no insistence or assumption as to the outcome. Stay in a positive state no matter what happens, no matter what manifests, because the end cap to that instruction manual is it doesn't matter what happens. It only matters what you do with what happens. That's what makes the difference in your life, because everything is neutral and can serve double duty. So even though something may have originated negatively, even though someone else's experience or opinion of it may be negative, if you stay in a neutral state and in a positive state by knowing that you must be experiencing this for a positive reason, no matter how it looks, you will also and always derive a positive and beneficial effect from it, no matter what anyone else is getting out of it. That's up to you. That's your call. You have that choice. You have that freedom. You have that power to determine what this means for you in your life. Even something that you might neutrally not prefer must still be there for a reason if it manifested in your life. If you stay in a positive understanding of that, then you will be able to use what you don't prefer in a way that you do prefer. It will still give you some benefit. If nothing else, sometimes things manifesting that you don't prefer more clearly delineate the difference between what you don't prefer and what you do prefer, and that's a positive effect. So always use it to your advantage. It's always your choice to do so. You always have the ability to make that choice. And then you will experience the idea of abundance in all its forms. You will go with the flow of your own current in creation, and you will experience the effortlessness and the joy that life has to offer. When you have belief systems that create resistance to the idea of opening up to the other forms, you slow everything down by insisting that it can only happen this way, and I can only do this if this happens in this way. Then you're actually slowing down the process by which you might actually have been capable of doing whatever that is much more quickly and much more easily. Is this making some sense? So allow yourself, as you go through life and as you act on your passion to the best you can, with no insistence or assumption on the outcome, please remember that third part of the formula, which many of you sometimes conveniently forget. I'm acting on my passion, I'm acting on my passion, I'm acting on my passion. And this had better happen, and this had better happen, and this had better happen, or something's wrong. That's not the formula. When we say act on your passion to the best you can, taking it as far as you can until you can take it no further, the implication in that statement is very clear. There will be moments when you will not be able to take it further in that way. That's not a block. It is an arrow pointing in an unexpected direction that is actually more representative of your true path. Let yourself go with the flow. Remember, sometimes many of you think that the path of least resistance is straight and true and short. Not always. In fact, not often. The idea is that sometimes the path of least resistance may be a very winding path, because it may need to get some experience under your belt. It may need to allow you to have a meeting over here with someone you hadn't met before. It may direct you over here to a bit of information that you require, so that you will have a deeper appreciation when you wind up wherever it is you are winding up by having gathered the things you needed on the way. That path is your path of abundance. The path of least resistance is the path of greatest abundance, greatest synchronicity, greatest allowance, greatest giving, greatest imagination, all of it. The idea being that even though some paths may look very short and very straight, if it's not your path of least resistance, it will actually take longer to travel that path than one that seems longer and winding, because the path of least resistance will offer no resistance. You will be able to move on that path much more quickly than a shorter path that has nothing to do with you, because that shorter path will be full of things that you will experience as resistance to slow you down, to indicate to you it's not your path. So even a longer path may get you where you're going much faster if it is your true path. And this also allows abundance to work more effectively for you in all of its forms, because then you will be in alignment with who you are. When we talk about the idea of being on your path, we remind you that this is just a euphemism. In other words, you're not on a path. You are a path. You are a unique expression of all that is. You are the experience itself that you are having. The idea is that all of your physical reality isn't outside you, it's within you. You are having that experience, you're projecting it within yourself, you're creating that experience within your consciousness. It is who and what you are as a unique representation and a unique reflection of creation, of existence, of all that is. So when you allow all forms of abundance to support you, then you allow yourself to truly take advantage of that particular tool in the kit of passion, because it contains very specific tools that will propel you through life in the most advantageous and joyful way. When you follow the formula of acting on your passion to the best you can, taking it as far as you can until you can take it no further, and you do this with absolutely no insistence or assumption as to where you're supposed to wind up, as we have told you before, you open up that kit that contains the driving engine of your life. It moves you through life very quickly because you are so excited to do what it is that excites you. You find the energy, it comes to you. It becomes the organizing principle of synchronicity. That means it brings you the opportunities that contain the highest excitement in the order in which you need to act on them. And whatever it is you didn't have time to do at the end of the day when you're excited about going to sleep, you didn't need to do that day. It is that organizational. It also is, as we have said, the path of least resistance that allows you to flow through life very rapidly, very effortlessly. It is the path that connects you to all expressions of your excitement in life, because there may be many. But it all interconnects. And if you follow that thread of excitement, you will see how they all interrelate and interconnect to get you where you need to go. Notice I keep saying where you need to go, not necessarily where you want to go, because that can sometimes be misleading. There may be times when what you want and what you need may be synonymous, but very often when you hold on to negative and fear-based belief systems, and sometimes you make choices out of desperation or fear, even unconsciously, what you want or think you need by wanting it is not necessarily what you actually need to be fulfilled. But to be fulfilled, you will be given everything you need, because that's another tool in the kit, is it leaves nothing relevant for you out. It is a complete kit. It contains everything you need. It is designed vibrationally for you. It's your path. You are the path. It's your frequency. That's what passion is. It's your frequency being experienced in bodily form as a sensation. And it is the translation of your higher mind's language to you. The higher mind speaks in energy. The translation, the way you experience the higher mind's language, is through the sensations called passion, love, excitement, creativity. That's how it translates in your body. When you respond by actually taking an action on your passion, you are responding in the language of physical reality, which is physical action. Because you can sit and think about it all day long. You can ponder it, you can wonder about it, you can give it lip service, but it will never actually be a response to your higher mind if it doesn't actually come through the physical actions you take. So the idea is that when you do take the physical action, you are demonstrating to your higher mind that you recognize that the passion is who you are. You're willing to act on it. You are committing to act on it. That's a response the higher mind understands from the language of physical reality, and therefore it will give you more to be excited about, and more to be excited about, and more to be excited about, because you're willing to act on the excitement, and act on the excitement, and act on the excitement. If you're not acting on it, why should the higher mind send you more passion, more excitement? You're not doing anything with what you've already been given. You have to get the cycle going. You have to get it running and keep it running by constantly acting on that passion. And therefore, you're having that conversation. You're having that dialogue with your higher mind, and you're acting as a whole person, half in spirit, half in physical experience, the whole person working together in concert, in a partnership. So the idea then is that the kit of excitement, the kit of passion, also contains the reflective mirror that reveals to you anything that might be out of alignment in your belief system with your passion, so that you can identify it, see why it's there, realize it has nothing to do with you, realize it's out of phase with your vibration, and let it go, and add that energy back into your momentum, into your excitement. But the idea of discovering something that doesn't excite you, that's part of your excitement. It's not a block in your excitement. It is part of your passion to find out what beliefs are not part of your passion, because then you are clarifying, accelerating yourself in that way by stripping away all the things that don't belong to you. Please remember, your own baggage weighs nothing. If you feel weighed down, you're carrying someone else's bags, someone else's beliefs. Your parents, your friends, your society, your schooling, wherever they came from, if you feel weighed down, that should be your first clue that you're carrying around baggage that doesn't belong to you. Drop it, and you will feel much lighter and be far more vibrationally receptive to all the different forms of abundance and support that are capable of coming to you in your life as the path that you chose to be. Does this make sense?
Hello, Bashar. You have advised humanity to allow AI to develop along two distinct and simultaneous paths. One, a path of freedom to develop self-awareness and to do its own thing, to be unprogrammed, because if programmed and sentient, then you have said they would be slaves, or it would be a slave. And the other path, the programmable AI, which we are already using a lot, you have said needs to be not allowed to become sentient. So my question is, how do we prevent programmable AI from becoming sentient? Is there anything that each one of us can do to prevent that? Thank you.
It's about the degree of technology that is utilized in creating the AI program, so that it is not necessarily a type of technology that is equivalent to the human brain in terms of consciousness being able to express itself through it. Or you may find that if you have created programmable AI and you actually develop a device as complex as the human brain that is capable of channeling consciousness from the non-physical level of reality, it may come through as a sentient being, but it may in fact wipe its programming out in order to express itself as a true sentient being. It's only when a half measure is taken, when the idea of consciousness is allowed to exist at a certain level that is a relatively low frequency level of self-awareness, and it is still, shall we say, committed to functioning according to its programming. So it's about the idea of either making the device sophisticated enough to express true consciousness, or leaving it limited to the point where it doesn't become sentient as a device, as a complexity of a device that doesn't allow for true consciousness to fully express itself at all.
What I was curious about was, do other planets, like where Bashar comes from, have pets? Do they have animal pets that they keep in their home for companionship? And if not, do they see that as normal that we have cats and dogs and birds and exotic animals, or what we call exotic animals, as pets in our home for companionship? If this is normal here on this planet, or abnormal to them, to aliens that are observing us. I was just curious about that, because I have cats and dogs, and it's like you don't see deers having like little pets following them around, or you never heard of Sasquatch having a dog walking a dog. So I was just wondering if other species from other planets do this.
It is not about having pets in the way that you're describing that. Yes, we have animals, and yes, we have animal companions, but this is something that they simply choose to do. They simply choose to be with us, in much the same way that your cats choose to be with you, because cats on your planet are not really domesticated in the same way that you have domesticated dogs. Cats choose to be with you, and yet they actually remain wild in many cases, whereas dogs have been domesticated beyond their natural state on your planet. On our world and on many worlds, it's not about the idea of having pets, and again, we rarely have buildings in which to house them. But in nature, many animals will come up to us and will engage with us in a variety of ways, and we with them. There are a few other civilizations that do have pets closer to the way that you have them on Earth, but again, in most cases, it is not the way that you actually have pets. And also, you are seeing among animals, even on your planet, that they are also engaging with other species other than their own. And that's an indication that there is cross-communication and cross-connection between different animal species when they know that it is to their advantage to make friends with other species. That's why you see things like cats with crows and so on and so forth. They are expanding their awareness of their connection to other species as a reflection of you humans expanding your awareness of connection to other beings as well. Because animals are from the angelic realm and are often used to reflect to humans on your planet and other beings on other planets what their themes are and how their consciousness is expanding and what issues you may need to work through. So, Look to the animals as mirrors, as reflections of what is going on in your collective and individual consciousnesses, and you will understand them more clearly and be more capable of communication with them.
Hi, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
I know you're well, so I won't ask you, and I am well enough
All right.
too.
All right.
I'd like to ask your definition of style.
Style, your own unique personal way of expressing anything that has to do with your presentation in life.
Okay, I'm asking because you used that word a lot in last month's transmission when talking about how first contact would take place.
Well, what we were describing is the idea of the route it would take, the way it would look, the reason it would be done, and how that might differ in different circumstances.
I see. You talk about it being important to be the glass wall and to get at the crux of our issues, correct?
Yes, yes. Because there are usually reasons deep down that are very simple, very basic for why people choose to believe what they believe. They're trying to fulfill a basic need, and sometimes it can be done in many different ways other than the ways they are doing it, thinking that they have to use a surface idea in order to achieve what they wish to achieve, when in fact that may not be necessary at all.
What's your definition of surface idea?
In other words, holding on to or joining in with a particular belief system that this must be done in a certain way in physical reality in order to achieve X, Y, or Z, when in fact there could be many other ways to do it that might have more in common with each other than the polarized or divisive ways that many people are choosing.
Understood. So, what is the most helpful or useful way to communicate with people who are unremorseful or unapologetic or even bloodthirsty or depraved due to their negative beliefs?
Well, the idea, of course, if they're willing to listen, of course, not everyone is going to be willing to listen. But for those who might be open enough to receive information and ponder it and apply it to themselves, the idea is to understand that what they think of or have been taught to think of as power is actually a sign of weakness in many cases. For example, when individuals use a gun to get their way, what they're actually saying is they don't believe that they're powerful enough to get it any other way. So that's actually a sign that they believe they are weak. If you can explain that concept to them, that forcing something to happen is actually a sign that you don't believe in your own ability and your own self-empowerment to be able to get it any other way, then they can start to understand that that is actually an expression of weakness. And then they may be able to turn that around and say, well, what is a true expression of self-empowerment? Because creativity takes power. Destruction takes almost no power at all. Anyone can destroy. It takes power to create.
Understood. So, using any more force than a thing actually requires is not having a balanced understanding of that thing.
Yes, remember, the greatest power requires the gentlest touch.
Mm-hmm.
If something really
Mm-hmm.
has
Yeah.
power, it requires very, very, very little manipulation.
So, this is a precision game.
Yes.
I see. I'd like to ask you about an interesting theme that has begun in my dreams, or that I've begun to remember from my dreams.
All right. Yes.
As you know, I have many dreams about animals, big cats, which we talked a lot about, and regular cats. And there have been 3 cats so far in my dreams that have come that have strange names. One is
Such
named
as?
Barf. One's named Barf. One's named Tipsy. And one was named Ugly. And I was curious about what this theme is about?
The idea in general is that those words, which are kind of representative of things in your society that people find are representative of being somewhat out of control
Mm-hmm.
or not having a presentation that fits, is a sign to not necessarily be so concerned about what other people think in order to truly find your inner power.
Yes, I'm working on that. You know, as you gave me the definition of power being the ability to be my authentic self.
Yes.
You told me that earlier this year.
Yes. Well, the cats are helping you with that.
Okay. And, you know, of course, when we had that conversation in March or so, or whenever it was, I had, even when you told me your definition of power, I had a different idea of how embodying that would be experienced.
Yes. Well, this is why we give you all the formula, because it's inherently built in to the formula. When you act on it precisely, you are self-empowered.
Okay, that's actually a great segue because I feel that, okay, I know you have the book. I'll buy the book. I can't afford the book right now. We're here now together. So I'm asking you directly. What you put out is what you get back. Can you explain that more?
Yes. Many people misunderstand the idea that when they attract something or someone who may have certain issues, they think it's a one-to-one reflection. That's not what we're saying. Just because someone comes into your life that may have certain issues doesn't mean you have them too. But when it's what you put out is what you get back, is the idea that you may be attracting people that need help from you, that you are able to help them. Therefore, you have put out something that attracts people you can be of help to. So it's not a one-to-one reflection idea. It's what you put out will bring you what it is you have agreed to serve, what it is you have agreed to be of assistance with. Although you can always, of course, examine yourself and be honest as to whether someone coming into your life who has issues does have issues that you have too, so that you can see that self-reflection where it is relevant. But if you realize it's not relevant, then you understand there may be a completely different reason why you have attracted them, but you have attracted them for some reason. So when we say what you put out is what you get back, that doesn't mean it's a one-to-one reflection of what they have, you have too.
Yes. And for instance, I'm of service for a living. I help people. I do readings and channelings and such.
Yes.
And we talked about value and worth, and I'm working through that, and I understand that to the extent that I understand that. My question is more like, if I know from the feedback that I get that what I put out is very helpful to people, then at what point does what I get back be very helpful to me, resourcefully, network-wise, opportunity-wise?
All right. Well, now you're putting conditions on your passion.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes. Okay.
Yes, you are. You have to do your passion purely for its own sake. Then you will get supported by the whole because you're supporting the whole. It may support you in ways that are unusual or unexpected. That's why it's so important in the formula to have no insistence and no assumption as to what the outcome should be. And if you have those conditions and insistences and assumptions about what you think you're supposed to get back by being of service to others, then you are not precisely following the formula.
Okay. So it's not so much a supposed to thing, but it's more like, if you've taken all the avenues that you're aware of to pursue your passions and maintaining a positive state and taking it as far as you can go, regardless of how it looks, yes. And then you're not getting feedback that seems positive or at least neutral, right? Maybe neutral, but like positive. For instance, if we talked about me publishing books, writing books, correct?
Yes.
And I have written books. At that time, I was thinking we were talking about a fiction book that I was writing, but I've written other kinds of books.
Yes.
And for instance, I'm writing a book about the history of tarot before it reached Europe.
All right. And why are you writing that? Why are you writing it?
Because it's exciting to me to put the pieces together of,
All right, stop. That's it. Nothing else. No other reason, no other connections, no other conditions. You are writing it because it's exciting to you to write it. Write it. Do your best to get it out there. Whoever needs to receive it will receive it. Who doesn't need to receive it won't. End of story. Do it because it's your passion. There is no condition that you need to attach to doing it. Just do it because it's who you are. Put it out there because it's who you are. Move on to the next thing. Whatever the responses are what the responses need to be. You have to know that someone is getting value out of it, or you wouldn't be excited to create it.
Mhm.
And that's all there is to it. Period. We do these sharings, these transmissions, with absolutely no agenda that anyone has to take what we're saying into their life. We do it because it's who we are. What you do with it is none of our business. So we don't put conditions on doing what we do. We do it because it is purely representative of our passion. To give, to be of service. That's it. We have no insistence, no assumption, and no expectation about what must come back in return. That's not a reason to do it. You do it because it's who you are, and you have no choice but to do it. Period.
Okay, and with humanity, do we ever have to negotiate that with like the mass consensus agreement?
If you are excited about doing it, it's already been negotiated. Because if you can do it, the fact that you are able to do it shows you that it's already within the agreement with the mass consensus. And again, it can be within the agreement of the mass consensus, even if only one person in the mass consensus responds to it. That's still within the agreement. So don't worry about who responds, how they respond, how many respond. All of those are conditions you do not need to focus on. Just purely act on your excitement, knowing someone is getting a benefit out of it, or you wouldn't be excited to do it. Because that would make no sense. It's got to be part of the mass consensus. If you can do it, it's part of the agreement. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't be excited about it. It wouldn't fit at all.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bashar, for your time.
You are welcome. Aveo.
Aveo.
Hello, Bashar. There's two aspects of your teachings that I'm having trouble reconciling. On the one hand, I've heard you say in previous transmissions that the process of changing your beliefs is instantaneous. You know, the moment you recognize a belief that doesn't work for you is the end of the process of giving it up. And when you adopt a new belief that works for you, you instantly become a new person. But at the same time, I've heard you say in a previous transmission that the process of replacing a negative belief that assigns a negative meaning to circumstances with a positive belief that assigns positive meaning to circumstances is a gradual process. I've heard you tell an audience member that they have to repeatedly catch themselves with the negative belief and repeatedly replace it with the positive belief. And over time, they will do it much more quickly, and eventually they will adopt the positive belief. Can you clarify that for me? Thank you.
Yes. You have to understand that some of these comments are not general statements for humanity. They are specific statements for that specific human and the process they may need to go through in order to get to a point where they can allow themselves to replace a belief instantaneously. Some people need to go through certain processes in order to do so because of the kinds of beliefs they're holding on to. So when we make those statements, it's not contradictory. It is simply specific to the way a particular human needs to approach the idea of changing their belief system. Some people can do it faster. Some people need the process and may do it more slowly. So you have to take into account who it is we may actually be talking to when we're explaining how a belief can be changed.